Mia Torres knew the look of desperation before it turned to anger. She'd learned to read it in the tightness of a man's shoulders when creditors called, the way hands trembled while signing bankruptcy papers, the silence that pressed too heavy against apartment walls when there was nothing left to say. 5 years ago, she'd watched that desperation consume the man she'd married, watched him transform from confident businessman to hollow-eyed stranger, watched their perfect life crumble like sand through desperate fingers. And she'd left. Not because she was cruel, not because she didn't love him, but because she was pregnant, terrified, and drowning in the wreckage of his collapsed empire. Now, at 30,000 feet, serving champagne to first-class passengers, she'd built something new, something stable, something that belonged entirely to her. Until the passenger in seat 1A looked up from his tablet and Mia's carefully constructed world tilted on its axis. Because Alexander Hunt, the man she'd left broken and bankrupt 5 years ago, sat before her in a suit that cost more than her monthly salary, diamond cufflinks catching the cabin light, confidence radiating from him like heat. He'd rebuilt his empire, and he had absolutely no idea that the flight attendant serving him coffee had once been his wife, or that their 4-year-old daughter was at that very moment sleeping peacefully in a modest apartment across the city, completely unaware that her father existed. Before we continue, if you love stories of second chances, strong women rebuilding their lives, and men who learn that money can't buy back what truly matters, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and don't forget to like this video. It helps us bring you more stories of resilience and unexpected reunions. Now, let's return to Mia's impossible situation. 5 years. 5 years since I'd walked out of our apartment with a single suitcase and a secret growing inside me. 5 years since I'd watched Alexander Hunt spiral into darkness, rage and self-destruction as his business empire collapsed around him. And now he sat in seat 1A, looking like he'd never lost a thing. I stood frozen in the galley, champagne bottle in hand, trying to control the trembling that threatened to give me away. Through the gap in the curtain, I could see him clearly. The same sharp jawline, now more defined, the same dark hair touched with distinguished silver at the temples, the same intense focus as he reviewed whatever was on his screen. But everything else had changed. The desperation was gone, the anger erased. In their place sat wealth, power, and a confidence I remembered from our early days together, before the bad investments, before the partners who'd betrayed him, before everything fell apart. And she'd left. Not because she was cruel, not because she didn't love him, but because she was pregnant, terrified, and drowning in the wreckage of his collapsed empire. Now, at 30,000 feet, serving champagne to first-class passengers, she'd built something new, something stable, something that belonged entirely to her. Until the passenger in seat 1A looked up from his tablet, and Mia's carefully constructed world tilted on its axis. Because Alexander Hunt, the man she'd left broken and bankrupt 5 years ago, sat before her in a suit that cost more than her monthly salary, diamond cufflinks catching the cabin light, confidence radiating from him like heat. He'd rebuilt his empire, and he had absolutely no idea that the flight attendant serving him coffee had once been his wife, or that their 4-year-old daughter was at that very moment sleeping peacefully in a modest apartment across the city, completely unaware that her father existed. "Mia, you okay?" Jennifer, my colleague, touched my arm. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I managed, forcing my voice steady. "Just tired. Long week." "Tell me about it. This route is exhausting. At least the passengers are decent today. The guy in 1A actually said please when I took his coat. Makes a change from the usual entitled jerks. Alexander had said please. Of course he had. Despite everything, despite the darkness that had consumed him at the end of those final months, he'd always been courteous to service staff. It was one of the things I'd loved about him, his ability to see people, really see them, regardless of their position. Except he hadn't seen me, hadn't recognized the woman he'd married 6 years ago, lived with for 3 years, promised forever to in a small ceremony that felt like a lifetime ago. To be fair, I looked different. I'd cut my long blonde hair into a practical shoulder-length style and let my natural brown show through. Lost weight from stress and single motherhood, started using my maiden name, Torres, instead of Hunt, wore minimal makeup and the anonymous uniform that made me just another smiling face and the endless parade of service personnel. I'd become invisible by necessity. And now, that invisibility was both protection and prison. "Service is starting," Jennifer said. "You want first class or economy?" Every instinct screamed to avoid him, to let Jennifer take first class while I disappeared into the relative safety of economy. But refusing would require explanation, would draw attention, would create questions I couldn't answer. "I'll take first," I heard myself say. "You did it last flight." "You sure? You still look pale." "I'm fine, really." I forced a smile. "Let's get this done." I prepared the service cart with shaking hands, checking and rechecking items I'd arranged thousands of times. Champagne, orange juice, water, warm nuts, the small luxuries that first-class passengers expected. Through the galley door, I could hear the captain's announcement. 20 minutes to cruising altitude. Then service would begin.
"Champagne, please," he said, his voice exactly as I remembered. Deep, controlled, with that slight rasp that had once whispered my name in the dark. "Of course." I poured with hands that somehow didn't shake, muscle memory overriding panic. "Would you care for anything else? Warm nuts, perhaps?" "No, thank you." He accepted the glass, his fingers briefly brushing mine. The contact lasted less than a second, but it sent electricity shooting up my arm. "This is perfect." He still didn't recognize me, didn't see past the uniform, the service role, the invisible barrier between passenger and crew. Relief and something that felt dangerously like disappointment warred in my chest. "Please let me know if you need anything else," I said, the standard phrase, and moved on to the elderly couple. Behind me, I felt his attention return to his tablet, dismissing me, moving on. I finished the service on autopilot, returned the cart to the galley, and stood there shaking. "You really don't look good," Jennifer said, concerned. "Are you coming down with something?" "Maybe." I seized the excuse. "I feel a bit off." "Why don't you sit down for a minute? I can handle the meal service." "Are you sure?" "Positive. You look like you're about to pass out." I retreated to the crew rest area, a small space with a few seats where we could take breaks during long flights, sank into a chair and put my head between my knees, trying to breathe through the panic attack threatening to overwhelm me. 5 years. 5 years of building a life for Ava and myself. 5 years of careful budgeting, of juggling childcare and work schedules, of standing on my own 2 feet without anyone's help. And now, Alexander was back, wealthy again, powerful again, a ghost from a past I'd tried so hard to leave behind. The worst part? Seeing him successful, seeing him whole and thriving, made something twist in my chest. Not quite regret, not quite resentment, but something painful nonetheless. I'd left when he had nothing, when the creditors were circling, when the apartment was being foreclosed, when every day brought new disaster and his rage grew with each loss. I'd left because I was pregnant and terrified,
because I couldn't bring a baby into that chaos, that anger, that desperate spiral. Because the man I'd married had disappeared beneath the weight of failure, leaving someone I didn't recognize. And I'd never told him. Never called to say I was pregnant, never reached out when Ava was born, never sent photos or updates or any acknowledgement that he had a daughter. Partly because I didn't know how to find him after we separated. He'd moved, changed numbers, disappeared into his own kind of survival mode. But mostly because I was afraid. Afraid he'd try to take her. Afraid he'd bring his chaos into her life. Afraid he couldn't be the father she deserved. Now, seeing him like this, successful and composed, I wondered if I'd been wrong, if I'd robbed him of something precious, if my fear had stolen 4 years of his daughter's life. Mia? Jennifer poked her head into the rest area. Passenger in 1A has a question, specifically asked for the flight attendant who served him earlier. My stomach dropped. Can't you handle it? He specifically asked for you, said he had a dietary question about the meal options. No escape, no excuse that wouldn't seem strange. I stood, smoothed my uniform, and followed Jennifer back to first class. Alexander looked up as I approached, and this time, something in his expression made me freeze. His eyes narrowed slightly, studying my face with an intensity that hadn't been there before. You asked about the meal options, sir? Yes, he said slowly, still watching me with that unsettling focus. I'm trying to decide between the salmon and the beef. Which would you recommend? Both are excellent. The salmon is herb-crusted with lemon butter. The beef is tenderloin with red wine reduction. It depends on your preference. He tilted his head slightly. Do I know you from somewhere? Every alarm bell in my head screamed. I don't think so, sir. I just have one of those faces. People often think I look familiar. Perhaps. But he didn't look convinced. What's your name? Standard question. Passengers ask it all the time. And I'd prepared for this moment, even though I'd hoped it would never come. Mia, I said, deliberately not adding my last name. Is there anything else I can help you with? Mia, he repeated, and something flickered in his eyes. Recognition? Memory? I couldn't tell. No, that's all. I'll have the salmon, please. Excellent choice. I'll bring that out shortly. I escaped back to the galley, heart hammering. He was starting to suspect, starting to put pieces together, and there were 6 more hours of flight left. The meal service passed in a blur of forced professionalism. I delivered Alexander's salmon, refilled his water, responded to his polite thanks with equally polite acknowledgement, all while feeling his gaze track my movements. He was watching me now, really watching, and with each passing hour, I could see the puzzle pieces clicking into place behind those intelligent eyes. After dinner, when most passengers were settling into movies or naps, Alexander pressed his call button. Jennifer was in the economy cabin. I was alone in the first-class galley. No choice but to respond. Yes, sir. How can I help you? Sit down for a moment. Not a request. His voice had taken on that commanding tone I remembered from before the collapse, when he'd run companies, made decisions, controlled outcomes. Sir, I really should. Please. Softer now. Just for a minute. Against my better judgment, I perched on the armrest of the empty seat across the aisle, far enough to maintain professional distance, close enough to hear his quiet voice. I know you, he said simply. Don't I? I serve thousands of passengers, sir. It's possible we've... Not as a flight attendant. He leaned forward, intense and focused. Before. Somewhere before. My throat closed. I think you're mistaken. Am I? He studied my face, feature by feature. The voice is different, the hair, the weight, but the eyes. He stopped. Something shifting in his expression. Your eyes are exactly the same. Silence stretched between us. Other passengers slept or watched their screens, oblivious to the drama unfolding in their midst. Mia Torres, he said slowly, testing the name. Then his eyes widened. Oh my God, Torres, your maiden name. I stood abruptly. Sir, I really need to. Don't. His hand shot out, not touching me, but blocking my path. Please, don't run. Not again. Alexander. His name felt strange on my tongue after 5 years. This isn't the place. Then where? When? You disappeared 5 years ago. No forwarding address, no phone number, nothing. I looked for you, Mia. For months, I looked. You had other problems. Nothing was more important than finding you. His voice croaked slightly. I lost everything. The business, the money, the apartment, you. And losing you was the worst of all. Pain lanced through my chest. You were falling apart. I couldn't stay and watch you destroy yourself. So you just left in the middle of the night? 3 years of marriage and you couldn't even say goodbye? You weren't the man I married anymore. The Alexander I knew was confident, kind, present. The man I left was angry, distant, drinking too much, and blaming everyone but himself for what happened. He flinched. I was in hell. I know, but I couldn't go to hell with you. I couldn't. I stopped, biting back the truth. Couldn't tell him about my pregnancy. Not here, not now. Couldn't what? I couldn't sacrifice my own survival for someone who'd given up. His expression shuddered. I see. Do you? Because it took me 2 years to rebuild after leaving you. 2 years of scraping by, working multiple jobs, barely keeping my head above water. But I did it. I survived. And I didn't? He gestured at himself, at the expensive suit, the first-class seat. Look at me, Mia. I survived too. I rebuilt, started from zero and built something even bigger than before. I'm happy for you. Are you? He leaned back, studying me. You're working as a flight attendant, living on a service wage, struggling the same way I was struggling 5 years ago. And you're happy that I clawed my way back to the top while you're still at the bottom? The words stung, because they were partially true. I was struggling. Single motherhood and entry-level flight attendant salary meant constant budgeting, stress about bills, fear about unexpected expenses. But I had something he didn't know about. Something infinitely more valuable than his billions. I have dignity, I said quietly. I have independence. I don't owe anyone anything. I built this life myself and nobody can take it away from me. I never wanted to take anything from you. You wanted to own everything around you, including me. And when you lost control of your business, you tried to control me even harder. I was suffocating, Alexander. I made it through deplaning, through the crew debrief, through the bus ride to employee parking. Made it all the way to my car before I broke down crying. 5 years. 5 years of carefully constructed distance, and one flight had demolished it all. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, my babysitter. A was asleep, no problems. See you soon. Ava, my daughter, his daughter. The secret that had just become infinitely more complicated. I drove home on autopilot, paid Sarah, and stood in Ava's doorway watching her sleep. She lay curled on her side, dark hair spread across the pillow, one small hand clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. She had Alexander's eyes, his chin, his serious expression even in sleep. I'd convinced myself that keeping them apart was protection, that Alexander's chaos would hurt her, that his world was too dangerous, too unstable, too broken. But seeing him today, successful and whole, made all my justifications feel hollow. What if I'd been wrong? What if he deserved to know? What if Ava deserved to know her father? Alexander's business card burned in my pocket like accusation. I'll think about it, I'd said, but I knew I'd already made the decision. I just needed to figure out how to tell the man I'd left bankrupt and broken that he had a daughter he'd never met, and that I'd hidden her from him for 4 years. 3 days later, I called the number on the card. It rang twice before his voice answered, cautious and professional. Alexander Hunt? It's Mia. Silence. Then, softer. I didn't think you'd actually call. Neither did I. I paced my small apartment, phone pressed to my ear. But you're right. We need to talk. When? Where? I can meet you anywhere, anytime. Tomorrow. There's a coffee shop near my place. Neutral territory. Send me the address. I'll be there. I gave him the details, then hesitated. Alexander, come alone. No assistance, no security, no entourage. Just you. All right. He sounded puzzled, but agreed. Just me. We hung up, and I stood there shaking. Tomorrow I'd tell him. Tomorrow I'd show him a photo of Ava. Tomorrow I'd watch his face as he realized what I'd kept from him. And then I had no idea what would happen. The next afternoon, I arrived at the coffee shop early, found a table in the back corner, ordered tea I didn't drink, waited. Alexander walked in exactly on time, dressed casually in dark jeans and a sweater that probably still cost more than my monthly rent.
His hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. You should have told me. No matter what state I was in, you should have told me. Maybe, probably, but I was scared, Alexander. Scared of your anger, scared of your instability, scared of what would happen to a baby in that environment. So you made the decision alone, decided I didn't deserve to know, decided I didn't get a choice. His voice was controlled, but barely. What happened? Did you terminate? No. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, found the photo I'd prepared, the one that would change everything. I had her, a girl. Her name is Ava. I turned the phone so he could see. The photo showed Ava from last week, sitting in a park, laughing at something off camera, her dark hair catching the sunlight, her eyes, his eyes, bright with joy. Alexander stared at the screen, didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. She's 4 years old, I continued, my voice shaking. She's smart and funny and kind. She loves stories and art and asking a million questions. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. 4 years? His voice broke. I have a daughter? A 4-year-old daughter? And I never knew. I'm sorry. You're sorry? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You hid my child from me for 4 years, and you're sorry? I did what I thought was right at the time. You were wrong. He looked up, and the pain in his eyes was devastating. I understand why you left. I was a mess. I was angry and lost and barely surviving. But Mia, she's my daughter, mine, and you kept her from me. I know. Do you? He stood abruptly, pacing. Other coffee shop patrons glanced over, sensing the tension. Do you have any idea what it feels like to discover you have a child you never knew existed? To realize you've missed 4 years of her life? 4 birthdays? 4 Christmases? First words? First steps? Everything? You weren't in a position to be a father. But even as I said it, I knew how weak it sounded. That wasn't your decision to make. I should have had the chance to step up, to try, to be there for her, even if I was struggling. He was right. The truth of it hit me like a physical blow. You're right, I whispered. I was wrong. I was scared and alone and making decisions I thought were best, but I was wrong. He stopped pacing, turned to look at me. Does she know about me? No. She thinks her father left before she was born, that he doesn't know she exists, which is true because you made sure of it. Yes. He sat back down heavily. What now? Where do we go from here? I don't know. That's why I called you, why I told you.
Because I realized that keeping you apart forever wasn't fair to either of you. How generous. But the sarcasm was weak, overshadowed by the pain. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But Alexander, she's 4 years old. She doesn't understand complicated adult situations. If you want to meet her, if you want to be part of her life, it has to be careful, gradual. We can't just drop a father into her world overnight. I want to meet her. Today. Now. That's not today, Mia. You've kept her from me for 4 years. I'm not waiting another day. I'm sorry. You're sorry? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You hid my child from me for 4 years, and you're sorry? I did what I thought was right at the time. You were wrong. He looked up, and the pain in his eyes was devastating. I understand why you left. I was a mess. I was angry and lost and barely surviving. But Mia, she's my daughter, mine, and you kept her from me. I know. Do you? He stood abruptly, pacing. Other coffee shop patrons glanced over, sensing the tension. Do you have any idea what it feels like to discover you have a child you never knew existed? To realize you've missed 4 years of her life? 4 birthdays, 4 Christmases, first words, first steps, everything? You weren't in a position to be a father. But even as I said it, I knew how weak it sounded. That wasn't your decision to make. I should have had the chance to step up, to try, to be there for her, even if I was struggling. He was right. The truth of it hit me like a physical blow. You're right, I whispered. I was wrong. I was scared and alone and making decisions I thought were best, but I was wrong. He stopped pacing, turned to look at me. Does she know about me? No. She thinks her father left before she was born, that he doesn't know she exists. Which is true, because you made sure of it. Yes. He sat back down heavily. What now? Where do we go from here? I don't know. That's why I called you, why I told you. Because I realized that keeping you apart forever wasn't fair to either of you. How generous. But the sarcasm was weak, overshadowed by the pain. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But Alexander, she's 4 years old. She doesn't understand complicated adult situations. If you want to meet her, if you want to be part of her life, it has to be careful, gradual. We can't just drop a father into her world overnight. I want to meet her. Today. Now. That's not today, Mia. You've kept her from me for 4 years. I'm not waiting another day. I wanted to argue, wanted to say he needed to be patient, that we needed to plan, that rushing would upset Ava. But looking at his face, at the desperate need there, I couldn't refuse. She's with my neighbor right now. I can bring her to the park, near my apartment, in an hour. I haven't been to one in a very long time. Come on. She grabbed his hand without hesitation, dragging him toward the swings. I'll show you the best ones. I watched them go. This man who'd once been my everything, and the daughter we'd created together, finally meeting for the first time. Alexander pushed her on the swings, his movements careful and gentle. Ava laughed, that pure sound of childhood joy, and something in Alexander's expression cracked open. They played for an hour. Swings, slides, the climbing structure. Ava chattered nonstop, telling him about her favorite foods and her friends and the stray cat she wanted to adopt. Alexander listened to every word like it was scripture. Eventually, Ava ran over to me. Mama, I'm hungry. We should head home for dinner. Can Alexander come? I hesitated. Things were moving fast, too fast. But looking at her hopeful face, at Alexander's expression as he walked over to join us, I couldn't say no. If he wants to. I'd love to, he said quietly. We walked back to my apartment, Ava between us, holding both our hands. Like a family, like something we'd never been. My apartment was modest, clean but small. Secondhand furniture, toys scattered in corners, the opposite of the luxury Alexander now inhabited. But he didn't seem to notice or care. He helped Ava wash her hands, sat at my tiny kitchen table, ate the simple pasta I prepared like it was a feast. And he watched our daughter with such intensity, such longing, that it made my chest ache. After dinner, Ava showed him her room. The small space I'd made as cheerful as possible with colorful curtains and her drawings taped to walls. "This is my favorite picture," she said, pointing to a crayon drawing of two stick figures. "It's me and Mama." "It's beautiful," Alexander said. "I could draw you too," she offered. "Then there would be 3 people." Alexander looked at me over her head, and I saw the question there, the hope, the fear. I nodded slightly. "I would really like that," he told Ava. As she busied herself with crayons, Alexander and I stepped into the hallway. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for this, for letting me meet her. It was the right thing to do, even if I should have done it years ago. We can't change the past, but maybe we can figure out the future." He paused. "I want to be her father, Mia. Really be her father. Not just visits, not just checking a box. I want to be present, involved, part of her life." "That's what I want too. But Alexander, we need to do this right, for her sake. We need structure, boundaries, consistency." "Agreed. And I need to know you've really changed, that you're not the man who fell apart 5 years ago." His jaw tightened. "I'm not that man. I rebuilt myself from nothing, Mia. Started with a single client and grew it into an empire worth 50 times what I lost. I did that sober, focused, and determined. I am not that broken person anymore." "Then prove it. Be the father Ava deserves. Be patient, consistent, present. Show me that this version of Alexander Hunt is real and lasting." "I will. I promise you, I will." We returned to Ava's room. She'd finished her drawing. 3 stick figures now, holding hands. "This is us," she announced. "Mama, me, and Alexander." Alexander took the drawing like it was precious treasure. "Can I keep this?" "Yes, you can put it in your house." "I will. In a special place where I can see it every day." Later, after Ava's bath and bedtime story, after she'd finally fallen asleep clutching her rabbit, Alexander and I stood in my tiny living room. "I should go," he said, but didn't move toward the door. "This is going to be complicated. I know. People will have questions. The media might find out you have a daughter, your business associates, your social circle. They'll want to know where she came from. Let them wonder. Ava is more important than optics." I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this time would be different. "Start slowly," I said. "Visits a few times a week. Let her get used to you. Then we can gradually increase time together." "What about legally? Custody, rights, all of that?" "Let's not rush into legal battles. Let's just focus on building a relationship first. If we can co-parent peacefully, we won't need courts involved." He nodded slowly. "All right, your terms. For now." The "for now" hung ominously, but I chose to ignore it. Over the next 3 months, Alexander became a regular presence in our lives. He came to the apartment 3 times a week, took Ava to parks, museums, anywhere she wanted to go, bought her appropriate, thoughtful gifts, art supplies, books, not the extravagant toys I'd feared. He was patient with her, kind, present in a way I'd never seen him be with anyone before. And slowly, carefully, they built a relationship. "Mama," Ava asked one evening after Alexander had left, "is Alexander my daddy?" I'd been dreading this question. "What makes you ask that?" "Tommy at daycare says daddies are the men who love you and take care of you and have the same eyes. Alexander has the same eyes as me." I sat down beside her, choosing my words carefully. "Yes, sweetie, Alexander is your daddy. Why didn't he come before?" "It's complicated. He didn't know about you, but now he does, and he loves you very much." She processed this. "I love him too. I'm glad. Are you and Daddy going to live together, like Tommy's mama and daddy?" There it was, the inevitable question. "No, sweetie. Your daddy and I are friends, but we're not together like that." "Why not?" "Sometimes grown-ups care about each other, but aren't right for each other in that way." She looked disappointed, but accepted it with childhood resilience. But the question stayed with me, because the truth was, as Alexander and I co-parented, as I watched him with our daughter, something was shifting. The anger I'd held onto for 5 years was fading, being replaced by something more complicated, more dangerous. 6 months after our reunion, Alexander invited us to his penthouse for dinner. I'd avoided seeing where he lived, kept our interactions to neutral territory. But Ava wanted to see Daddy's house, and I couldn't refuse. The penthouse was everything I expected. Luxurious, modern, stunning views. But what surprised me were the touches he'd added. A room converted into a space for Ava. Not a playroom, but a real bedroom. decorated thoughtfully with input she'd clearly given him. Her drawings on the walls, her favorite colors everywhere. "I thought she should have a space here," he explained as I stood in the doorway, throat tight, "so she feels at home when she visits." "When she visits," I managed. "I'd like her to stay some weekends, if you're comfortable with that. I've hired a nanny, fully vetted, excellent references. Maria, she'll be here whenever Ava is." It was reasonable, more than fair, but the thought of Ava sleeping somewhere I couldn't reach her in minutes made my chest tight. "Let's try some daytime visits first, build up to overnight stays." "Whatever you're comfortable with." Dinner was lovely. Ava chattered about everything, comfortable and happy with both parents present. Afterward, she fell asleep on Alexander's couch, exhausted from playing. "She's out," I said softly, covering her with a blanket Alexander provided. "She usually is after spending time here. I think I tire her out." We stood together, watching our daughter sleep, and something shifted in the air between us. "You've done well with her," Alexander said quietly. "Despite everything, despite me not being there, you raised an incredible little girl." "Thank you. I'm sorry I wasn't there. Sorry I was such a mess that you felt you had no choice but to leave. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about her. Sorry I kept her from you for so long." We stood in silence for a moment. Then Alexander said, "Do you ever think about what might have been if I hadn't lost everything? If we'd stayed together?" "Sometimes. I think about it constantly. Wonder if we could have made it work. Wonder if I could have been the man you needed me to be. You're being that man now, for Ava. What about for you?" He turned to face me fully. "Mia, these past 6 months, getting to know our daughter, working with you to co-parent, it's reminded me of everything I lost, everything I threw away." "Alexander, I'm not asking for anything, not expecting anything, but I want you to know that seeing you again, seeing how strong you've become, how amazing you are as a mother, you're still the most incredible woman I've ever known." My heart hammered. We can't go back. I'm not asking to go back. I'm asking if maybe, possibly, we could consider moving forward, together, as a family, real family. We're not, I struggle to find words. We're different people now. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe who we were then wasn't meant to last. But who we are now, I think we could be something amazing. I looked at Ava, sleeping peacefully. Looked at Alexander, standing before me with hope and vulnerability and genuine change evident in every line of his face. 5 years ago, I'd left him broken. Now he stood whole, asking for a second chance, not demanding it, not buying it with his wealth, just asking, honestly and openly. "I need time," I said finally, "to think, to figure out if this is really possible or just wishful thinking. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere, not this time." As I carried Ava to Alexander's car, he insisted on driving us home. As I watched him carefully buckle her into the car seat he installed, as he drove through the city with careful attention to our precious cargo, I realized something important. I'd spent 5 years running from the past, but maybe it was time to stop running. Time to see if the man who'd lost everything and rebuilt himself could also rebuild us. Not into what we were, but into something new, something stronger, something that could withstand whatever storms came. Because sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about never falling apart. They're about finding each other again after breaking, about choosing each other with full knowledge of flaws and failures, about building something real from the ruins of what once was. As we pulled up to my apartment, Alexander turned to me. "Thank you for this, for tonight, for every day you let me be her father. Thank you for being the man she deserves, the man I hoped you could be. I'm trying. Every day I'm trying." And watching him carry our sleeping daughter to my door, seeing the tenderness in every movement, I realized he wasn't just trying. He was succeeding. The question was I brave enough to let him succeed at winning not just his daughter's heart, but mine again too? Only time would tell. But for the first time in 5 years, I was willing to find out.